So what changes, if any, should the teams make for the second tests for these summer tours, as we call them in the Northern Hemisphere? Let's get stuck into England, and we need to get these out fairly quickly because they've been picking their sides pretty early in the week. What do England need to do? Because, of course, England are 1-0 down. Indeed, the Northern Hemisphere are 3-0 down. I did say maybe it's going to be 5-1 to the south, but maybe it's going to be 6-0 now because that England game against New Zealand in the first test could be the best chance. We will see. What was good was that England's general play was pretty damn good, to be honest, but if you don't kick your goals, if you can't scrummage, you can't expect to win. So what can England do about it? Well, one thing we know is that Joe Marler is out anyway, injured. So Ayogan has been called up and he's been very good for Northampton. So we've got 3 young loose heads there, Baxter, Rod and Ayogan. And Rod's had more time in camp, so it would be pretty foolish to bring Ayogan in, even though I think he's a very good player. So Baxter starts. So he came on after 20 minutes in the first test. He's going to start this test. I think he's got a big future. He's up against some massive guys in that New Zealand pack. We'll talk about them in a minute. But Baxter starting, Rod coming on. Am I really confident that they're going to do the job in the scrum? No, but goodness me, they're going to learn a lot. The captain, Jamie George, has to start really. I would like to see Theo Dan get some starts at some point. I don't think it's now. I think George did okay. At tight head, what can England do? Well, not a lot really. I think they have to start Joe Hayes just to see if he can do any better. He's kind of in his prime as a tight head at the moment. Is he going to be good enough? We will see. Who's on the bench? Well, goodness me, take your pick. Cole or Stewart. I'm not really, too fussed too, because I don't think either are particularly up to the task, but let's go for Stewart as the younger guy there. So Hayes and Stewart. Second row's not a problem. Martin and Toje looked really good. Back row, the same. Cunningham South, Underhill and Earl have a nice balance. I know that I marked Earl down a lot in my review, but that's because his one big mistake, missing that tackle, caused a try and was so costly in the game. But apart from that, Ben Earl was excellent. His power, his acceleration, his footwork is brilliant. Really helped set up, say, Fewa Busu's try, for example. And I think that back row is looking pretty good and definitely the best that we can do. Subs on the bench for the forwards. Well, I think that Alex Coles continues as the second row sub. And Ben Curry I would bring in. Tom Curry just doesn't look like he's got it at the moment. Maybe needs some more time under his belt. He's had a couple of games, hasn't done it. Ben Curry's been on fire for Sale. So let's get the other Curry in. He can cover 6 and 7. Where's Ted Hill when you need him? Well, not on tour is the answer. Into the backs, well, Mitchell, of course, starts and maybe even plays the whole game, to be honest, because when Ben Spencer came on, goodness me, there was a marked deceleration in the game, and I think Spencer must drop out now. So disappointing off the bench. Randall comes on. We know his box kicking isn't the greatest, but goodness me, he's so quick at getting the ball away, and he looked great in that Japan game apart from the kicking. So Randall coming in for Spencer on the bench. What do you do with Marcus Smith? Well, apart from the goal kicking, he was excellent. He made some tries. He defended hard. Does he goal kick? I don't know. I'm going to start Slade as well, even though I think I would like Freeman to have some time at 13 in this game. Do you get Slade goal kicking? He's been goal kicking so well for Exeter. Marcus Smith normally goal kicks pretty well for Harlequin, so that's a tricky one, but you've just got to nail your goal kicks. Do they stick with Smith? I'm sure they will. Would I start with Slade goal kicking? Maybe. Centre-wise, Lawrence I thought had an excellent game against New Zealand. Slade was okay, like I said. I would like to see Freeman come in, but Lawrence and Slade are forming a pretty settled partnership, particularly with that defensive alignment, trying to get Slade flying up in defence, so they stay. The wingers, Fewa Busu, was really good. He's a young winger and he's working off his wing, similar to what Talaya did for New Zealand. They're very similar sorts of wingers, slipping out of tackles, working off their wing. He was excellent. Slightholm, I think, has to come in. I definitely think that Freeman was a bit lost in that game. Not that he's not a good player, but let's have him on the bench to cover the back three and the centres and hopefully come on at 13. So Slightholm was on the bench, so I think he gets promoted. I'd be happy to see Roebuck, but then you've got the danger men of Slightholm and Fewa Busu, proper danger on both wings. That's exciting because George Furbank had a massive breakthrough game against one of the best teams in the world. He looked, dare I say, world class in that game. Defended super hard, high ball brilliant, counter-attack brilliant. What a turnaround he's had considering his first outing for England all those years ago was so disastrous. On to the home team, the All Blacks. What changes might I make? Well, I might actually rotate the props, start to Ngafasi and Newell, who I thought looked really good, Newell particularly. De Groot and Lomax, they were okay. De Groot's body angles in the scrum have come into question, so let's get him out of the firing line to start with and start to Ngafasi and Newell. They will give England loads of problems, that is for sure. Taylor absolutely stays. He was good and Mua came on and had some impact. Barrett and Tuipulotu, yep, I'd keep them going. I like the look of Fee now. He's that classic 6. Big, tall, good in the line out, big tackles, big carries. He absolutely stays. And Papali'i was getting over that ball really well, and Surveyor doing his things with the run. So I don't think there's any reason to change there. One thing I might change is I just want to see Satiti play. I think he's got such a big future. Sure, Jacobson's a really good player, but I think let's have a look at a couple more players. We might as well. Satiti is an absolutely explosive beast. Maybe he comes on at 8 and Surveyor moves to 7. That would be pretty cool. Another change I might make is Leonard Brown in at outside centre. He's such a good all-round player. I don't think that Ioane's got a right to play there all the time. He hasn't had an amazing season and he wasn't great in the first test. So let's rotate those two as well. Apart from that, I'd keep them the same. Talea and Reese I thought did so well on the wings, and Perifetta had a good stint at 15, even though they wanted to get Beauden Barrett on. Keep those guys the same in the back three, but a couple of tweaks to that New Zealand team. On to the Irish. Can they get a win against South Africa? It's going to be tricky because South Africa will be better for their first run out for absolutely ages of their first choice team. Well, what changes might I make? Well, the same front row, they went quite long as I thought they would. Did okay, although Porter gave away some penalties, but I think the front row did pretty well in that scrum until it got later in the game. I would bring in James Ryan. I think Joe McCarthy has maybe run out of steam a bit this season for Leinster and now for Ireland. I don't think he has to start. He's still very young. So get McCarthy on the bench and start James Ryan. I'm sure he'll be very hungry to prove that he should be starting anyway. And personally, I would make a change in the back row, even though it's not going to happen because Peter Amani is the captain. But Ryan Baird is so good. We saw it when he came on. He's an absolute freak. They need to do something a bit unexpected to beat South Africa, and he could be the guy there from the start, give him more minutes, alongside Van der Vliet and Doris, who was excellent once again. Casey's got that nasty head knock, so I doubt he'll be playing. In fact, I'm sure he won't be playing. Murray came on, scored a try, looked sharp. He's the experience, so he comes on. Crowley, I think, is building into this Irish shirt. He's absolutely Ireland's best 10. I just love his physicality, his commitment. He looks so at home on that international arena. In the centres, I would bring in Ringrose. I thought Henshaw did okay, but fully fit Ringrose, I think, is the better outside centre. He looked fully fit when he came on, so let's start him. Fine having Henshaw on the bench because he's covered so much anyway. The wingers didn't have a great day. Nash didn't do a lot. Obviously, Lowe made those howlers in defence dealing with kicks, although he created a lot in attack, created tries in attack. So I would go with Lowe again because he can be so dangerous, and just tell him, don't do such silly things. He can do that sometimes, but when he's on, he's amazing. But I would bring in Jordan Lama on one wing for Nash. Lama's had a really good season, so I think that's worth getting some extra pace on there maybe, and with Ringrose, might give them a bit more edge and the fire of Ryan starting. So I think that's what I do with Ireland. South Africa, well, I think keep them largely the same because I think they're getting some good continuity there. There's a few questions, though. I think in the halfbacks, I'd keep the pack exactly the same. I know that Quagga Smith dropped a couple of kicks, but apart from that, he was excellent. So no need to change there. Khaleesi looking fantastic. Peter Steph-Toy, of course. But yeah, halfbacks, Faf de Klerk, still not fully convinced. You could start Williams or indeed Ryanak, but I don't think you're gaining anything particularly from disrupting too much. So I'm going Faf de Klerk. But I am going to make a big call, one big call in this team. Now, Pollard had a terrible kicking day, but apart from that, he was pretty good. But you've got these series to try a few players as well. Not too many, but try a few. And the big talent is Sasha Feinberg, Magomazulu. I think he starts. You'd have Andre Pollard on the bench just in case, but get that one change in there, get the talent in, see how he goes with the team that is settled from the last week. So yeah, it's not saying Pollard, you're not good enough. It's saying let's do something to try something for the future. Someone who I think has got a big future. So Magomazulu is in. And finally on to Wales, up against Australia. I'm reserving judgment on Australian players till the end of this series. But Wales, it is winnable. They got close against Australia. Australia, I thought, were pretty tidy considering they'd only had a couple of weeks together. But Wales have to show that this complete rebuild is on the right track. It's not a renovation. It is now a complete rebuild. and I think they need it. What can they do to be more competitive? Well, in the front row, it is a bit of a worry, but the one big thing I would say is a plus is Archie Griffin. I did say in the preview show, in the selection, that he was the guy that I thought had a lot of potential, and I thought he looked pretty decent against Australia. Thomas didn't, but I still think he's probably the best they've got, so that's a bit of a worry. Lake didn't have his best game. He lost the ball in contact. Line-out wasn't the best, but still, you've got to stick with Lake. He's the talent. Griffin only 22, but that is positive sign. So Thomas, Lake and Griffin once again. The second row, I quite like the look of it. Jenkins and Schwinzer. Schwinzer looking an absolute beast, and the back row's the best they can put out, so there's no point changing that. Rafael looking pretty decent. Wainwright was one of the standouts, and Plumtree's growing into the role as well, so fairly happy with that, although still worried about that front row, but I don't think there's much you can do. But it's in the backs where I would make the changes. Gareth Davis, I'd get him starting. They've given Bevan a couple of games now, so get the experience in there. Davis starting, Costello at 10, who is the more natural 10. You saw it when he came on against Australia, a bit more difficult to predict. Thomas did really well, I thought, considering he's a centre playing 10. So let's have him at 12. 2 ball players there, 10 and 12, and let's completely change those centres because it just wasn't working. Watkin is okay, and that's pretty much it. He's reliable, but he's not going to set the world alight. Tompkins came on and had an absolute howler when he just got completely run around by Wright. So let's have Thomas and Eddie James as a completely new centre partnership. I think they need to try something because those centres just haven't worked for Wales. Grady, we know he's a beast of a player, a real athlete, so let's get him on the wing where he's been playing a lot this season. Hathaway had a bit of a stinker, but he's got a future. He was probably in too young because they are struggling for players at the moment, but he's got a cap, so he can drop out, that's fine. Grady, the big man on one wing, moved Liam Williams to the other wing where he did well in the first game against South Africa, and Cam Winnett's been going well for Wales, the youngster from the Six Nations, so I think that's a better back three. Try again in the centres. Bit more exciting. That's the way I'd go. I'd probably have Carter on the bench for Hill because I thought he was decent against South Africa. Botham, Hardy, Beetham and Watkin rounding it out, covering everything. That's the way I'd go for Wales. That's the way I'd go for England, New Zealand, Ireland and South Africa. Let me know what you would do down below. Comment, subscribe, like, all of that would be amazing. And I'll catch you next time.